Senate will please come to order. Senate will please come to order. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of Senate Bill 451.
The Junior Senator from the 17th moved that the Senate resolve itself into a Committee of the Whole to consider Senate Bill 451. Is there discussion? It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the motion adopted. I hereby appoint the senior senator from the 15th to preside as chair of the Committee of the Whole.
The committee will come to order. The clerk will take a silent roll call. Before we get going here too far, I want to recognize the junior senator from the 17th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I request unanimous consent that conceptual amendments on Senate Bill 451 be permitted.
Is there an objection? If so, seeing none, so ordered. I'm going to make a comment on this too, so that everybody understands. One of the best parts about being in the Senate is being able to have conceptual amendments. And the way this is going to work for the conceptual amendments, since it's so, I'm dealing with twice as many people as normal on this, is if I'll look to the attorneys, and I'll do just like I do in committee. If the attorney says that they can do this as a conceptual amendment, then so be it. That's the way it's going to be, and we'll get it done. And I'll have them repeat it back to us so that everybody understands, that the attorney understands on these amendments. If it's large and it's changing the scales or something like that that can't be done as a conceptual amendment, then what we'll do is have to have that amendment put in writing and brought back in. But to a greater degree, the conceptual, I love conceptual amendments, and I want to be able to do that. Again, it's one of the best parts of being in the Senate. Now, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And we had some testimony that was coming in, so we're going to have 2 more people to possibly to come in and testify. We know one that's here. If the other one's not here in time, then we will move on to the discussion phase, then the amendment stage. So with that said, I recognize the senator from Marion to bring someone to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the courtesy extended to us.
Absolutely.
We do have 2 additional people that we would like to hear testimony from. One is the Treasurer's Office. They're currently in the House giving testimony or presenting their budget presentation. So the first presenter I would like to call up is Christy Black. Christy is from the West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council. She's a parent of a special needs child.
Before you get going, so I can establish the rules that we had yesterday, I'm all about uniformity as well, as much as I can. You'll have 10 minutes, and then we can ask questions. When you hear this sound, that means you got 1 minute left. When you hear it twice, then you know that it's the time's up on that. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Christy Black, and I am the Advocacy Specialist with the West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council. But most importantly, I am the mother of 2 girls, Avery, who is almost 2 and will be attending public schools, and Gracie, who is 15 and in the 7th grade at Milton Middle School. Gracie also has Down syndrome. She receives her free and appropriate public education in both the general education and special education environment. And Chairman Blair, I would like to thank you for this opportunity and the body for this opportunity to speak to you all today. 2 of my biggest concerns with the bill are education savings accounts and public charter schools. According to the 2017 Disability Compendium, West Virginia has 39,464 students ages 6 to 21 who receive special education services, and we are ranked 3rd highest in percentage of students receiving special education services. First, many people, including parents of students with disabilities and probably some members of this body, don't realize that by withdrawing a student from public schools, in particularly to access an ESA, they are waiving that student's civil rights and their right to due process. ESAs would inadvertently reinforce the lack of expectations for students with disabilities, not to mention that an ESA would not come close to covering the cost of educating a student with a disability. A student with a disability who would access an ESA would not graduate with a diploma unless they found a way to meet those graduation requirements or pass an equivalency test. And I would like to add that West Virginia has the highest population of people with disabilities per capita and nearly the highest, if not the highest, unemployment rate for people with disabilities. Some states that have ESAs for students with disabilities report that students who utilize ESAs often regress. In fact, they often re-enter the public school systems. Due to the higher number than average of students with disabilities, ESAs and charter schools would decrease the funding for our students with disabilities in traditional public schools. The traditional public schools will also still have the same costs for maintenance, buildings, bus fleets, utilities, and no transportation would make it difficult for students with disabilities and other parents that may be single parents and people that live below the poverty level. Both ESAs and charter schools would cause further segregation, and this is something that advocates and parents like myself have fought for many years, long and hard to prevent. Studies show that students with and without disabilities educated together both grow academically in inclusive settings. Due to the flexibility, charter schools have the ability to kick our children out, usually due to behaviors or low performance. And according to a GAO report, charter schools enroll a lower percentage of students with disabilities than traditional public schools. And according to a GAO report, anecdotal accounts also suggest that some charter schools may be discouraging students with disabilities from enrolling and denying admission to students with more severe disabilities. We already have a shortage of qualified special education students, and there's no guarantee that a charter school could recruit them, and if they did recruit them, that will make it an even bigger crisis in traditional public schools. There's also no mention in this bill of someone qualified or experienced in special education services as a member of the commission or the governing board. Many of you all have met my daughter, Gracie. She paged for this body last year, and she's not going to live in a special world or a segregated world, and supports should not be divided in the public system. There is a breakdown in the public education system, and it does need fixed. However, this bill is not the answer. We need to ensure that all students have equal access to a quality, free, and appropriate public education. Thank you all.
Is there questions of the presenter? Senator from Cabell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much, Christy, for not only being here today, but for everything you do every day for the youth of our state. And I appreciate very much you making the time to be here this morning.
Thank you.
Further questions? Senator from Wayne.
Christy, the one aspect that you're bringing up is one that I think that a point that you've made. West Virginia actually, from a standpoint of allocating dollars, has allocated dollars probably more on a basis for anyone that has a disability or anything like that in a better fashion than most other states. Wouldn't you agree with that?
That we allocate dollars better.
Now, it's how they do it sometimes is, you know, I know that you and I've had discussions before that you have some problems with how a county may handle it or how a group may handle it or anything, but from a general standpoint, compared to some of the contiguous states, we do allocate more dollars for this. It's sort of how that you handle it that you have some problems with from time to time.
Yeah, I have a problem with how it's handled. I think that there's, you know, in the education system, I think though that still maybe we do need to allocate more for students with disabilities, or maybe it is rearranging the way that the whole student aid formula is structured.
So this is what I want to, the point that I'd like, that you've made to me before, is that presently we probably need to review how we're doing things.
Absolutely.
But what you're talking about specifically to this bill would mean a reduction in
yes.
dollars. Not only, you still may have the same issues that you have, but it is a reduction of dollars.
Yes.
And it would not necessarily treat anyone with a disability as fairly as we have presently done now.
Right, absolutely. And actually if you pull those students out of public school, then, you know, it's taking away funding. So
and I agree with you wholeheartly on that. We've had many discussions on the other side, and
right.
but I think that your comments are very, very well placed. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Further questions of the presenter? I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much for being here today. Okay, now we're going to enter into the discussion phase. Before we get going, with discussion, I want to make sure that all members understand that if you speak and you want to speak again, I will make sure that everybody else, just like I did previously in this, give everybody an opportunity to speak before I go into round two. It doesn't mean that I won't recognize you, but I want to make sure that you understand that aspect of it. So, here we are in discussion. Senator from Monongalia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification. Will the Education Chair and anyone else who helped craft this legislation be subject to questioning as we move along this morning?
Whether they yield or not, I can't answer that, but you can ask for them to yield, as always in committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion? No discussion? Going once. Going twice. Okay. We're in the amendment phase. Are there amendments? No amendments? Going once. Going twice. I hear no amendments. I recognize the junior senator from the 17th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that Senate Bill 451 be reported that it do pass and be referred to the...
No.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman. I move that we agree to the committee substitute, the language of the committee substitute.
Question is on agreeing to the committee substitute. All those in favor will say aye. Roll call is demanded. Has been demand sustained. Clerk will. Okay. Committee will be at ease for just a second until they get the machine ready. Okay. The clerk will prepare the machine. How do I vote? I understand that, but
You're programmed.
Oh, I'm programmed. Okay.
You're programmed. You're good.
Well, I didn't know I didn't want to be voting for the president.
On this question, 18 yeas, 16.
Okay. 18 yeas, 16 nays. I declare the motion adopted. I recognize the junior senator from the 17th for another motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee substitute for Senate Bill 451 be reported to the full Senate with recommendation that it do pass and the committee of the whole rise.
The question is on the motion that the committee substitute for Senate Bill 451 be reported to the full Senate with the recommendation that it do pass and that the committee of the whole rise. All those in favor will say aye. Roll call is demanded. Is demand sustained? The clerk will prepare the machine. And the machine is closed. It is past 1816. I declare the motion adopted, and the committee substitute for Senate Bill 451 will be reported, and the committee of the whole rises.
Senate will come to order. Senate will come to order. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate recess until noon today.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in recess until noon today. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the Senate in recess until noon today.
House will please be in order. Those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time. Members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer today by Pastor Christopher Wetzel, guest of the gentleman from the 54th Delegate Hot.
Good morning. Can we bow our heads, please? Our Father and our God, we humbly stand before you today, amazed at your love and your grace that you have shown us. The love we have for our great state brings us together as a people, and I pray that today unity would abound. I pray that the resolve of those present today would be strong as they do the work before them. I pray for their families during this session as they are apart. Pray for safety and protection upon them as they travel back to their respective counties. And I pray that they would know your strength during this season. Lord, we certainly acknowledge that the challenges before this body are great, but we also acknowledge that the God that is for them is greater. So I pray that your wisdom would be ever present with the men and the women of the sacred chamber who have graciously answered the call to public service. This morning we recall the profound words of the Old Testament prophet Micah, who said, "You have shown us what is good. What do you require of us, O Lord, but to do justice, love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God?" I pray those principles would be ever present in our lives. And so today, from the northern panhandle to the southern coal fields, from the Ohio Valley to the eastern panhandle, may your face shine upon us as we walk with you. May your glory and your grace cover every hill and hollow of our beloved West Virginia. We ask these things in the majestic name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by the gentleman from the 54th Delegate Hot.
Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Wednesday, January 30th, 2019.
Lady from the 48th, Delegate Waxman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read.
Lady from the 48th asked unanimous consent that further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. So ordered. Introduction of guests. Gentleman number 35th, Delegate Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I actually have 3 introductions today. First and foremost, my good friend and no stranger to the Capitol, Amber Perry, is in the gallery today. I also have a bunch of students today from South Charleston High School, and I'd like them all to stand. And I also have West Virginia Foster Adoptive and Kidship Parents Network here today. So would all 3 of those guests please stand up and would the House make them feel welcome?
Gentleman number 36, Delegate Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have a couple students here paging for us from my alma mater, Chamberlain Elementary. We have Sloan Mullins, Josie Cooper, Wesley Gardner, Lily Ross, Maya Shama, Bo Bender, Ashlyn White, Liam Laird, and my son Braden Robinson. And Connor Laird. We also have Cartine Gergis, Micah Hale, Blake King, if the House would make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 18th, Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the great privilege to introduce some special guests today. Up in the North Gallery, you have my beautiful wife, Jennifer, my children, Charlotte, Jack, and Eleanor. Would guests please make them welcome?
Gentleman from the 9th, Delegate Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pleased to announce that the doctor of the day comes to us from Huntington, West Virginia. Please welcome Dr. Clay Mitchell.
Gentleman from the 54th, Delegate Hott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You've already met my pastor, Christopher Wetzel. Now I'd like for his family to stand and be recognized. They're in the North Gallery. He has his lovely wife, Charlotte, with him, Sadie, Sarah, Emma, and Carson. Please welcome them.
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Mant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. I would like to ask for our guests from Sarah Murray and Leanne Crabtree from Hoops Family Children's Hospital. Welcome today. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 37th, Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the South Gallery, we are joined by a Charleston City Council member, Caitlin Cook. If she would stand up, would the members please make her feel welcome?
Gentleman from the 46th, Delegate Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the North Gallery today, I have some special guests. My girlfriend's family and some constituents. They're here for Homeschool Day. If Adam Burkhammer, Jamie, his wife Jamie, and Cooper and Riley, if they'd please stand and the House make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 16th, Delegate Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure today to introduce some social work students who've been friends of mine for a long time and from my alma mater of Marshall University. That's Tyler Monroe, Brooke Mathis, Darian Thompson, Brandon Hensley, and Holly Davis. Would you all please stand, go Herd, and the House make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 19th, Delegate Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Thompson, Lovejoy, and Rohrbach, and myself, I'd like to welcome a page with us today, and she's from Kellogg Elementary. Her name is Abby Hatfield. Abby, if you're here, please stand up. House, please make her welcome.
Gentleman from the 19th, Delegate Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Hicks, we have two of my students from Wayne High School. They are Elizabeth Queen and our student body president, Walker Tatum. And if they would please stand and give them a round of applause.
Gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegates Moore, Scaff, Byrd, and myself, we have two representatives that are neighbors of mine from representing the ARP. They're in the North Gallery, and if you wouldn't mind standing, Jane Marks and Kathy Merrill. And if the members would please welcome them.
Gentleman from the 27th, Delegate Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The delegates representing Mercer County are pleased to have with us today a number of students from Concord University who are enrolled in the social work program. We have 14 students that are in the Bachelor of Social Work program and 15 that are in the Master of Social Work program. And they're accompanied by the Associate Professor of Social Work, Ida Mills. I'd ask that those folks stand, and would the House please make them feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have with us Nadia Goff. She is from Charleston, West Virginia, and she takes her education at home. We're very happy to have her here. So on behalf of Delegate Eric Nelson, Delegate Scaff, and Delegate Byrd, please make her feel welcome.
Gentleman from the 17th, Delegate Lovejoy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery today, we have some other students, social work students from Marshall University. They're here with Dr. Kim White. They're also students of the one and only Dr. Phil Carter. I'd ask them to stand up in the House. Please make them feel welcome.
Lady from the 51st, Delegate Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have some people here from Morgantown today, and especially from Milan Pushkar Health Right. There's Caitlin Sussman, who is a social worker and now is working in peer recovery, and several other people on staff. And then I think today is Social Work Day. If there are any others from WVU or from Morgantown who are social workers, would you please stand, all of you?
Gentleman from the 42nd, Delegate Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Lavender Bowe and myself, we'd like to welcome a page today from Eastern Greenbrier Middle School. If she would stand, please welcome Bailey Caraway, and in our West Gallery, her mother, her chaperone today, Christy Caraway. Will the House please make them welcome?
Gentleman from the 22nd, Delegate Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a few announcements, introductions here. In the West Gallery, on behalf of myself and Zach Maynard, we have with us Mandy Ross, who's a counselor at Chamberlain Elementary, and Whitney Bender, a first grade teacher at Chamberlain. If they would stand, and the House make them welcome. Also, we have visiting with us for Homeschool Day, Samantha Perna with her children Sophie and Gavin. If they're here, if they would stand and make the House make them feel welcome. Also in the North Gallery is my mother coming to visit, also for Homeschool Day. Everybody would stand and make her feel welcome. Pam Jeffries.
Gentleman 34th, Delegate Boggs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple introductions this morning. First of all, and I think they've been introduced sporadically, but as a group, I know the South Gallery is nearly full of hardworking, dedicated social workers from all over West Virginia, many social work students, and in the other galleries as well. If they would all stand as a group, and the members please make them welcome. And also, Mr. Speaker, today being Homeschool Day, I think we have a number of homeschool families from Central West Virginia. I don't know whether they made it into the gallery yet or not, but if they're in the gallery, if they would stand and members would please make them welcome as well.
Lady in the 51st, Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to introduce Karna Matheny White and Jason White from Wood County with the West Virginia Foster Adoptive Kinship Parents Network. Thank you for being here. Will the House please give them a warm welcome?
Gentleman from the 18th, Delegate Worrell.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have one more introduction. Today being Homeschool Day, in the North Gallery we have a group of homeschool families and students from Lewis Memorial and Classic Conversations. If they would please stand, and the members and guests would make them welcome. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 3rd, Delegate Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Delegate Storch and myself, I have two announcements I'd like to make. First, in the South Gallery, we have Mike Toothman from Youth Service Systems. I see him up there. If he'd please stand. And have some friends from West Liberty here, social work students. If I believe they're in the gallery, if they would stand, and if everybody make them feel welcome. Thank you.
Are there further introductions of guests? If not, reports to standing committees.
Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 2420, establishing the Mountaineer Trail Network Recreation Authority. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Committee on Finance had under consideration House Bill 2666, Supplemental Appropriation to the Department of Veterans Assistance. House Bill 2668, Supplemental Appropriation Department of Administration Public Defender Services. Senate Bill 268, updating meaning of federal taxable income in West Virginia Corporation Net Income Tax Act, and Senate Bill 269, updating terms used in West Virginia Personal Income Tax Act. Reports the same back with recommendation that each do pass.
Report to be received.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2004, providing for a program of instruction in workforce preparedness. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2363, relating to the Upper Kanawha Valley Resiliency and Revitalization Program. Reports back committee substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the committee substitute do pass.
Report to be received.
Committee on Industry and Labor has had under consideration House Bill 2646, providing a safe harbor for employers to correct underpayment or non-payment of wages and benefits due to separated employees. Reports the same back with amendment, with recommendation that it do pass as amended, that be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Bill 2594, prohibiting railroads from blocking crossings on privately owned streets. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Committee on Technology and Infrastructure has had under consideration House Bill 2338, allowing the owner of an antique military vehicle to display alternate registration insignia, and House Bill 2359, relating to exemptions to the commercial driver's license requirements. Reports the same back with amendment, with recommendation that each do pass as amended, that to be referred to Committee on Government Organization.
Report to be received. Each bill be referred to the Committee on Government Organization. Further reports to standing committees. Reports to select committees. Messages from the Executive. Messages from the Senate.
Clerk of the Senate announces the passage by the Senate of House Bill 2351, relating to regulating prior authorizations. The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 72, creating sexual... The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 72, creating Sexual Assault Victims Bill of Rights.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 102, relating generally to powers and authority of courthouse security officers.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 149, exempting certain veterans from concealed weapons license fees.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 243, requiring racetrack participate in West Virginia Thoroughbred Development Fund.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed committee substitute for Senate Bill 258, establishing common law veil piercing claims not be used to impose personal liability.
Report to be received. Bill be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Further messages from the Senate. Resolutions.
House Concurrent Resolution 44, United States Marine Corps Private First Class Randall Carl Phelps Memorial Bridge.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and they be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Petitions, motions, bills introduced.
House Bill 2782, Supplementary Appropriation, Department of Health and Human Resources.
Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and they be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
Lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Senate Bill 28, removing hotel occupancy tax limit collects for medical care and emergency services.
Gentleman from the 64th, the Elgott Householder, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill would remove the $200,000 limitation on the amount of the hotel occupancy tax proceeds that a county commission or municipality may spend annually on medical care and emergency services in the county. I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 58th, Elgott Coles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, I serve as the director of the Morgan County Economic Development Authority, and out of an abundance of caution, although this bill doesn't appropriate money, I think it's proper to ask for a Rule 49 ruling.
Under the facts as presented by the member, the chair rules the member to be a member of a class and therefore should vote. Are there further members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 96 ayes, 2 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 28.
Are there amendments to the title?
Committee on Finance moves to amend the title.
Question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it, and chair declares the title amendment adopted. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Senate Bill 177, Fire Commission rule relating to State Building Code.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 177 is our first rules bundle. Luckily, it's a pretty quick one, and it comes to us from the Fire Commission. It does two things. It adds a sunset provision to the rule, and it also updates the energy efficiency standards for commercial buildings to bring them in line with the 2010 version of the International Property Maintenance Code. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the rule.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Senate Bill 177.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect from its passage.
Lady from the 49th moves that the bill be made effective from passage. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine. Lady from the 42nd. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent not voting. More than 2/3 members elected having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill effective from passage. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2010 relating to foster care.
Gentleman 27th, Elgott Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill updates the regulation of foster care. As you know, the foster care system currently has approximately 7,000 children, and about 500 of those are out-of-state placements. That population has been increasing significantly over the past several years. The main provisions of the legislation are are several. With respect to the transition of foster care populations into the managed care system, creating a foster child and parent ombudsman, implementing performance-based contracts for child placement agencies, studying kinship foster care, requiring DHHR to review and update their legislative rules to a reasonable, prudent parent standard and to ensure normalcy for the foster child, clarifying how much DHHR will pay for court-ordered services, changing policies to ensure that more children are placed in West Virginia, clarifying the type of assessment that will be performed on a foster child, and also stating that the use of medication-assisted treatment may not be the sole reason for parental rights termination. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 12th, Delegate Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speak to the bill.
Proceed.
4 years ago, Chairman Ellick and I had a meeting about foster care, and I brought up the issue about, is it possible for them to manage health care? Since 2013 to 2018, the foster care program's grown over 3,000 children. 43% of those are age 5. Let me say that again. 43% of those are under age 5. My wife and I have 5 children between us. And we have 2 grandchildren. Of those 7 children, 4 of them are adopted. 3 of them have been in the foster care program. This doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't even start to solve the problem, but it is starting. With a little leadway, Speaker, I have a black trash bag. I won't unfold it. Excuse me. But that is what most foster care children use as a suitcase. A black trash bag. When they go from one home to another home. I've talked to an individual that lives in Jackson County that was in 27 foster homes before she was 18 years old. And she was adopted before she was 18. Again, this doesn't solve the problem, but it is a big start, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there further members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Lady from the 51st, Delegate Fleshauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm one of the many members of this body that have dealt with this bill in 2 committees, and trying to figure it out. Trying to figure out DHHR is pretty complicated. And I spoke yesterday about the minister who was so happy about taking care of foster children that he wished he had more bedroom space. And he was, but today I want to do 2 things. I want to give a shout out to the DHHR employees who are social workers and have other positions, who are there for very little pay because they care about children and adults. I think they have been a little bit overlooked in this debate. I think that we are going for a solution that may be the easy solution, and we have a major crisis that we've been hit with, and we are acting like it's the fault of those employees, and it is not their fault. It is the fault of drug companies who have invaded our state and sold people pills as if it were an instant solution to all of our problems. But the DHHR, there's a mixture. There's a mixture of people that are bad eggs and that are good eggs in every profession. We know that's true here. We know that's true of teachers. We know that's true of university professors. We know that's true of industry. But most of the people who work there are devoted to their job, and they have giant caseloads. I spoke to a DHHR former supervisor that I've known since our kids were in kindergarten. She said one of the people that she supervised had 125 cases. And this woman was supposed to go out and check on kids once a month. And I know that people get frustrated. They maybe show up at the DHHR office and nobody can see them. And that's because these employees are doing their job. They're going out and making sure, and I'm sure it's kind of a pain if you're a foster parent, but we want to make sure that everyone is checked on once a month on a reasonable time period. So a lot of times they can't return the phone calls, but because they have all these competing responsibilities and they're doing it for very little pay. I went to visit Try Again Homes, which is one of the child care providers. They now are in a company that's called Blueprint. And I really remember a gentleman who used to be a DHR worker, and then he switched over to this child care association, and he said, Barbara, he said, you know, I think one of the things that DHR workers could use is PTSD coverage. He said, I can remember going to a home and looking at a crib where the baby, there were maggots in the baby's crib. And he said, I can't forget that. I'm having difficulty. And I had to get out of that job, the job that I loved, the job that I cared about, the job that didn't pay very well, in part because of that. So I'm a little bothered that we are not undervaluing these people that are so devoted to our state and to our children. And all the people that I've had one email in favor of this bill. I have had many emails opposed to the bill. And one theme runs through that they don't understand why we would be giving away something that the state has been doing since the 30s to a profit-making company. I think their bottom line is we shouldn't be making profits off of our most vulnerable children. And for that reason, Mr. Speaker, as much as I know that everyone who is in favor of this bill cares also and wants a good solution for our children, I just am not ready to make that jump into the deep end when, and the reason they say that is because they say, you know, people that work at DHHR, they don't have to keep track of their billable hours. They're not going to cut corners. They're going to do the best they can with their heavy workload and their low salaries, but they are not, their bosses are not motivated by profit. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I urge a no vote.
Gentleman from the 6th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman does yield.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This bill, I've got a lot of emails from constituents, and one concern that I've heard from many of them is that they are concerned that this is going to reduce care, reduce or limit care for children in, well, just let me read it. It'll reduce, restrict, or remove treatment for foster children. And can you help me understand that it won't?
My understanding is that it should not reduce care. It may cut down on duplicated services that the child has experienced through different forms of their placements over the years. It's supposed to help with the continuity of their care by having uniform records that go straight through the kid's care if they go from one home to another. That way it cuts down on medical accidents, medications that don't go from one home to the other, and cutting down on other problems. As far as not providing services, you have the ombudsman that's supposed to look out for that to make sure. DHHR will be reviewing these also, looking at the plan. There's an annual review for the plan each year for renew before it gets renewed. So there are checks and balances in there.
Okay, thank you, sir. Permission to speak to the bill?
Proceed.
I listened to the gentleman from Jackson County, and I saw the emotion that was real. And having been in law enforcement for years, I've seen tragic situations where kids are removed from their home. We have to have a place for them to go. We have to take care of them. We have to be certain that we do everything we can to take care of these most precious commodities of our state. This is not a perfect bill. I agree with the gentleman from Jackson County, but it's a beginning. It's a place we can start. and I would urge passage.
Lady number 36, Delegate Eastep Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've sat in several committee meetings and put a lot of research into this bill. I've heard from agencies, child placement agencies, and managed care organizations, and a lot of people that own companies, but we didn't involve foster families. No foster family came in and spoke to us to encourage us to pass this bill. I will be voting against this bill today because I think our most vulnerable children deserve the best, most humane care we can give them, and I feel like we're selling them to the highest bidder with this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at 67th, Delegate Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everybody agrees we've got a really, really serious problem with foster care. It is many-faceted, and it's complex. The solution proposed in this bill, I submit to you, is not a solution, that's an illusion. The solution is staring us right in the face. And it was alluded to a few minutes ago by the gentlelady from the 51st. If we would reduce the caseloads of the hardworking, dedicated people in the Department of Health and Human Services, whose job it is to solve this, it would be solved that way. And it could be solved with much less money than is going into this contract. I strongly urge we reject this bill. Thank you.
Does the gentleman at 27th wish to close debate? Gentleman from the 1st, Delegate McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, corporate managed care doesn't exactly have the best track record since the 1980s. If you look into the history of corporate managed care, it just really doesn't. It doesn't matter what sphere or discipline we're talking about here, or industry. Under oath, I was told by DHHR, in no uncertain terms, implicitly anyway, that this was going to increase the cost to the taxpayer. Because at best, he said, that we were going to break even on this corporate managed care contract. And in bureaucratic terms, usually when they say, hey, we're going to break even, it's probably not going to break even. It's probably going to be a little bit more expensive, but that's just sort of a history of the nature of government in my mind. But he also, in addition to said, okay, my question was, in judiciary, are you going to lay off any employees within the Department of Health and Human Resources? And his answer was, well, no. I go, well, you're doing less work. Why do you need so many employees? So he said he was going to, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, hire, this is the Deputy Secretary, by the way, of DHHR, hire more employees within DHHR to do different functions, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not saving any tax dollars here, okay? Matter of fact, we're probably increasing the burden, the tax burden overall, but that's just the fiscal part, right? If you move on to a second or third section of this bill, there's no true answer here in this bill. There's no true solution. Okay, I understand that you bring in this corporate managed care outfit, you know, it's a big, first off, anytime you talk about big business getting in bed with big government, the hair on the back of my head starts standing up. Okay, so I'm already skeptical of some of these things. And quid pro quos and all of that. It's just sort of my understanding of how big business, when they get in bed with big government, starts to work. Sort of a little bit of a corrupt type of atmosphere, a corrupt type of deal there, I guess. But you know, I have been deeply invested within the so-called foster care crisis within this state for the last 4 years. I mean, I left the business world and had this opportunity to try to live maybe a better life, and you know, I work for sort of a charter school, but it's legally classified as a residential care facility. You know, I wear many hats. I do many different jobs there. Lately, I've been managing the whole campus off and on, and I can't tell you what to begin to say. Can't really describe in words the kids under our charge on campus. We are always court-ordered over capacity, constantly. I would venture to say, I don't have the statistics with my particular school on hand, but it's definitely over 50% of the children on my campus have either overdosed themselves or have witnessed one of their parents overdose, or have witnessed one or both of their parents not only overdose, walked in on them dead. They witnessed their parents die after the fact. Most of these children do not have homes. They're either orphans or their parents have abandoned them because of this drug problem. This drug problem is pervasive through our society, okay? And I have, you know, some assessments and causes as to why that's come to be now, and I don't want to get into that. You know, and this is coming from me, okay? All right? You know, if I can get my boss down here, the executive director, I've told him, hey, you know what, why don't we just give up all this government money? I'm tired of taking this. And he basically said, hey, you know, why don't you stay in your own lane there, buddy? You know, this bill is not going to really correct the problem, because the problem is far deeper than I think most of us recognize. I think the problem really is, from my research, has something to do with the welfare state that's been institutionalized over the last half century. But also there's a lack of purpose in people's lives anymore. And whatever that purpose might be, whether it's the church or whether it's community-based organizations, whether it's a great manufacturing job that you can take pride in, supporting your own family. There's a lack of purpose. And that's what I find with the kids on campus. There's a lack of purpose. I spent the last 3.5 years implementing Greek philosophy into the curriculum, and we now have the best rehabilitation rates out of any of our competitors within the whole state. Okay, so why I'm telling you this is I don't normally talk about my day job. You know, I get in usually around 9, and for the last 6 months, ever since my heart surgery, I have not left that campus till after 11 o'clock p.m., sometimes after midnight, because I have kids that say, you know, I cannot go to sleep unless Chief Pat comes down to my group in my cottage and tucks me in and says he loves me. All right? Now, usually I like to stick to logic and lay off the whole emotional thing, but in light of some of the lower echelons within the leadership, House leadership team.
Chair will
What's that?
Give the member a lot of latitude, but Chair will enforce decorum on the rules of this House.
All right, I'll start talking back to the bill then. Listen, what I'm trying to say is I have a little bit of experience, Mr. Speaker, and what I'm trying to tell you is that this bill right here is not going to be very productive going forward, and it might even be counterproductive to what we're looking at here. With that, I'll just end my comments. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 44th, Delegate Hannah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think a lot of us can agree that the foster care system in West Virginia is flawed. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So, this bill may not be the solution, but on the same note, it just could be the solution. So we can continue on the same path and keep doing exactly what we're doing, or we can take a shot at this. We can vote for this bill and vote for a change. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
Gentleman at 36, Delegate Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to rise. I was not on any of the committees that have considered this bill, and so I don't have intimate knowledge of all the details, but I do have questions. And the first question is, why are we giving the care of our foster children over to an insurance company? Now, I've mulled that around, and I thought, well, is that the ultimate bureaucratic approach to this situation? We've heard many members say that they aren't certain that this is going to take us to where we need to be, but it's a change, and change is good just because we'll get away from where we are. Well, I'm not sure that that's a good idea. Another question that I had was, why such a big contract? Why one single insurance company? Why are we choosing one insurance company for $225 million? Now, most all of the things we do when we want to try to fix something that is broken is we use pilot programs. There's no reason that we don't do this in 2 or 3 counties or in a region and see how they do. And if they do a good job, well, then maybe we found something. The other question is, where does the money come from? $225 million. Now, in finance yesterday, I tried to get an understanding from the DHHR representatives about how the money how this will shake out. In other words, we'll have an insurance company getting a contract for $225 million. Does that mean that the department's going to reduce its services and its work by $225 million? Or is there just going to be extra money in the system? And you say, well, if there's extra money in the system, Larry, that's a good idea, and I would agree with you. And apparently, on questioning yesterday, the department year after year after year leaves hundreds of millions of federal dollars on the table unused. Now, maybe that's what we'll do in this case. But one has to come to the next question is, why haven't we been doing that? If we can pull federal dollars for foster care, why don't we do that? Is there a special fund for $225 million for this contract? For an insurance company? And then in terms of what happens and how it works, you know, how is the insurance company going to make decisions about the particular needs of individual children? Will they do it from an office in Charleston or an office in Columbus? Now, we were assured yesterday that DHHR would require them to be servicing this contract in the state of West Virginia. And we were told, given some information, that it would take an insurance company about 150 new employees in order to fund the contract. And my question is, another question, will they be social workers or will they be insurance adjusters? I assume they'll have social workers on staff. Will they have to see every child or have a person involved in the placement of every single foster care child that we have? Will they be in court in abuse and neglect proceedings, making recommendations about care and trying to determine what's best for an individual child? Now, right now, the department's in those hearings, and we say, well, but the system, you know, isn't functioning. Well, I think it's doing a lot better than we realized. We do have 7,000, we have an overload of the number of people and children in foster care, but they're doing, I think, a good job. Just say to yourself, if we put $225 million new dollars into the foster care system, don't you think the department could handle that? And it would be handled by social workers who could be better paid and who could have caseloads that were more reasonable. Another question is apparently this is not exclusive. We're not going to take the department completely out of the system, that there will be choice involved. And you say, who's going to choose what? Well, apparently it's set up so that there would be choice to have the child treated through the department's placement or through the insurance company's placement. Now, The idea with that is that there's a choice. You may know in Medicaid, we have a number of contractors who are managed care that provide Medicaid services as opposed to the regular services that DHHR provides through its standard Medicaid. Now, in those, for those particular managed care, there's a choice, you know, and the Medicaid recipient can choose for, I think it's a year, whether they want to be with Unicare or they want to be with West Virginia Family Health or with standard Medicaid. There's a choice by the individual patient, and that makes sense. I don't know how the choice is going to be made in this case for 43% of the foster care children who are under age 5. I believe I've been told that there is a profit of 10% in the contract, which would be $22.5 million on an annual year to operate the contract. Now, I think that may be more money than insurance companies, health insurance companies, are making currently on insurance. That the world of health insurance is changing, and the profits aren't what they used to be. 10% would be certainly good. So you know, you ask these questions: why are we using an insurance company? Why are we choosing a contract that's so large that it's $225 million? Why are we selecting an insurance company that has not had any participation in West Virginia before? As of some date when they sign the contracts, all of a sudden they are expected to take over foster care and probably a majority or 3/4 of the foster care placements that we have. Are they going to be ready? Now, I'm told that the contract is 800 pages. So there may be in that contract pages that do require and answer some of these questions. I don't know, but it doesn't. An 800-page contract for $225 million does not answer the question of why aren't we running a pilot project, like we do in almost every other situation. When we want to try something new and fresh, you'll see the bills, they'll say pilot project. We could do this in 2 or 3 counties. We don't have to jump on it right now. It's an incredible, it's the ultimate bureaucracy to establish something and say, well, we're not going to use state employees, we're just going to put it in an insurance company and let them handle it, and that way we haven't seen an increase in our state employees. Well, you know, I just don't think that it answers the ultimate question, why such a big contract? Now, it takes us to the bottom line, and apparently in one of the committees, the department said that we really have the legal authority to do this. I mean, we don't need a bill. And that makes me say, well, why? There's another question. Why are we running a bill if that's the case? And if we turn this bill down and vote no, doesn't that say to the department that we don't at least want a $225 million statewide contract for one insurance company? And wouldn't that be a good beginning for doing something really that could help our foster children? I'd urge the members to vote no on the bill.
Thank you. I'm very conflicted on this bill. My heart tells me that I should vote no, and my head tells me that I should vote yes. Before I went into the private sector, for 20 years I managed public housing authorities around in the Northern Panhandle. So I have dealt for many years with DHHR, and this is no reflection of the folks that do the CPS work, but this system has been broken for many, many years, 30 years in my experience. I think and that's not to criticize the folks that work there. They do great work every day that I wouldn't want to have to do, and thank God for them. But I'm very conflicted because I think even if we do staff up at DHHR, let's face it, it's taken them 2 years to try to get this contract out the door. I share some of the same concerns that my colleague just spoke of. I'm not on the committees, but I sat in on the committees when these hearings were held and the public hearing, and I think we have, DHHR has told us, we're going to do this we don't need your permission to do this. So I don't even know why we're voting on that piece of it. But I do think that we have left the foster parents out of it. That's why I brought the amendment up yesterday. I am really concerned that DHHR will not do the job that they need to do if we spend the money to turn it over for them to staff up. I haven't been able to get any answers from the governor's office. How many of the 2007 employees that you spoke about at the State of the State are from DHHR that weren't rehired because of the hiring freeze? Are we setting them up for failure? There are just so many questions. And at the same time, I haven't heard from a lot of my constituents on this. But at the same time, I met a family this morning who, they were foster parents to a 5-week-old child. They couldn't get a second opinion, and that child died for medical services. Yesterday, we heard, when questions were asked on this bill, that the foster families have the right to make the decision to either go with the MCO if that isn't working. They have the right to they have the right to decline those services and go back to fee-for-service network. But we need to remember that the state is the guardian of those children, not the foster parents. I've had foster parents come in my office and say, I have to get DHHR approval to even get my foster children's haircut. So if they can't get the child's haircut, are they going to be listening to the foster family when they say, this isn't working for my child and I need additional medical care? So I guess not off the subject, but DHHR is a behemoth and we need to deal with that. It is ineffective in so many ways across the state, and we as a body need to take that on. I feel very strongly about that. It doesn't work. It's been broken for as long as I've been working, over 35 years. But that aside, I am reluctantly going to vote for this bill because I need to go with my head on this one. We need to try something different and see if it works. But at the same time, I'm going to be asking all of you that are supporting this, and the insurance companies have been in my office and stayed, we will be hiring case managers, licensed social workers to help do this, to make this program work. We need to hold the DHHR accountable if a foster family is asking for to go back for a fee for service, because that's what's best for the child. We need to be accountable here, and if those things are going to happen, we need to make it happen. We need to make them accountable. So I am reluctantly going to vote for this bill, but it's a very hard decision. Thank you.
The gentleman, 27th, Delegate Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 68%. 68%. That's the percentage of males who've been arrested since leaving foster care. 68%. 40.5%. That's the percentage of females who have been arrested since leaving foster care. 44% of the folks in foster care have substance abuse or dependence problems when they leave foster care. 39% had a mental health diagnosis in the last year. 39%. Less than one-half have high school diplomas when they complete when they're released, when they hit 18, and less than half are employed. Those are the alarming statistics that were provided by Deputy Secretary Samples in a presentation before the Senate Finance Committee about a week ago. Can anybody say that the foster care system is working well now with those kind of statistics? I will certainly concede that this bill has something for everyone to hate. There's a piece in there that you're going to hate. It's not perfect, but I would suggest to you that there are pieces in there that we all should be happy to see and embrace. For instance, the bill currently cuts down the certification process that's required of our foster parents from every year to every 3 years. And if you talk with someone that has foster children, they'll tell you that is a major burden and perhaps a disincentive for people to agree to be foster parents. In addition to that, the bill provides an ombudsman that can serve not only as a monitor of the managed care system and the effectiveness of that and report to us as to how it's working, but also serves as a single point of contact for those foster care folks who, and many of which feel like their concerns are not adequately communicated to the agency. This is the person they now know they can talk to, who can relate to those concerns and provide answers. There's a study provided in the bill for kinship care, which is a neglected area and a widespread area of coverage for these children. There's a study in there. With regard to the managed care system, as has been mentioned, our testimony before our committee was that and those of you who've been involved in this process know the department's been going down that road for a couple of years. They can do it anyway, but what we do in this bill is provide a sunset of any approval by the legislature on June 30 of 2024. Any approval that the legislature has given expires on that date. There's also provisions in there that limit the termination of parental rights if the parent is participating in some sort of a medical assistant treatment. And our evidence during our hearing was that there are inconsistent applications of how that's treated. So this bill clarifies the circumstances under which parental rights can be terminated. And there's also substantial accountability and transparency requirements on the DHHR to provide us with information as to the progress of the system. As I said, the bill is not perfect, but I've always been told we shouldn't allow the pursuit of perfection to be the enemy of the good, and this bill does have good provisions in it. The choice we have today is not A or B, it's A or do nothing. A no vote basically prolongs the status quo. It changes nothing. On the other hand, a green vote, a yes vote, at least puts us on the path toward improving a system that clearly is not working. I urge passage of the bill.
Gentleman from the first, Delegate McGeehan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Speaker, and for cutting me off earlier. Appreciate that. I want to address some of the problems that have never, some of the solutions that have never been brought forward to be integrated into this bill. No one's talking about truancy laws, compulsory education. Great reform we could place into this bill to relax truancy laws. Okay? Because according to some studies, and then just their own calculations on some of the residential care units, including my own and others, anywhere between 10 and 20% of the individuals that are sent into the system are guilty of truancy laws. They're skipping school. So, you know, a police officer might not like them on the side of a street corner. They're skipping school. Maybe they're smoking cigarettes underage. And, you know, they get them for that. They put them in the system, guilty of truancy, where they really don't belong in a lot of these residential care placement facilities, precisely because, you know, those are tailored for minors who have serious drug addictions. They need serious help. Just by relaxing truancy laws, you could alleviate so many resources in terms of beds throughout the state. That was never talked about. Matter of fact, there's a couple bills coming over from the Senate that are going to tighten truancy laws. So these are the reforms that we should have been talking about. We should have had a more open process where, you know, it wasn't just a couple people who had their hands in drafting this bill. And we could have had a much better reform bill that actually achieved a meaningful reform, a meaningful objective. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The lady from the 32nd, Delegate Kessinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would agree with almost every single person that stood up here today and said that this is not a perfect bill. I'm the lead sponsor of this bill, and I agree wholeheartedly. This is not an end-all, be-all to the foster care crisis in our state. But every single one of us need to recognize that we are in a state of emergency in West Virginia right now. We are #1 nationally in child removals. Our system has tripled in just the last few years because of our overwhelming drug crisis. The system is the problem. My friend from the 4th said so perfectly earlier that the system is broken. It's not the employees. It's not the people who are in the galleries today. They work hard. My friend from the 1st is working hard for the kids of West Virginia that need the most help. The individuals in this state that need somebody to be a voice for them. These are the people that are working so hard day in and day out. The problem is the system. The system has tried and it has failed. The system has come up short, and that's what we're trying to do today, is resolve this system. When we were discussing this bill, I want to make sure that everybody knows this bill is not just the result of a 1-hour conversation between myself and the majority leader. This bill is the result of more than a year's worth of conversations with foster families, with foster parents, with foster children. We've met with judges. We've met with the department. We have met with every single entity that is going to be impacted by this. And yes, there are people that have heartburn about certain parts of this bill. But in order to truly make a first step, to take the first step, to make change, we have to be willing to say enough is enough. When this bill was first introduced, the day it was first introduced, I decided to make a call because I'd realized at that point I'd talked to a lot of foster families. I've talked to more than dozens of foster families over the last year. I've talked to the department, I've talked to judges, but I hadn't talked to any kid who was in the system or who had been in the system. And so that morning, I called my cousin Ryan, who was 19 years old, who was removed from his home when he was just a little boy. And I said, Ryan, if there's one thing, right now he's at Concord University, he's going to become a special education teacher. He loves kids. I said, Ryan, if there's one thing that you want to change about the system when you were stuck in that process, what would it be? And he responded without skipping a beat. He said, the entire time I felt like a number. Everywhere I went, it was as if people were just telling me, pull a number and wait. The system failed him. For more than a year, he was stuck in this broken system where he didn't feel cared for, where he didn't feel loved, where nobody spoke up for him. And that's what we're doing today. We are saying these are not just numbers. These are not just kids these are not just numbers on a page. These are children. These are children who have been left to fight for themselves, who have experienced more traumatic things than most of us in this room ever have or ever will experience. And right now, we are failing them. There are kids in my district right now whose medical records have been lost, who are blind because of traumatic abuse that they suffered, but their medical records have been lost. There are kids in my district right now who have received duplicative vaccinations because nobody knew whether or not they received the vaccinations they needed to have. We have to the conversation shouldn't be about corporations and about bottom lines. It needs to be about these kids. They're the ones that are falling through the cracks. And they're the ones that we're trying to rescue. Kids like Ryan. Kids like my friend from the 12th district who he shared their story. That's what we're trying to fix. This is the first step. The majority leader and many members of this body and I have already had conversations about how we're going to continue this conversation through the next year. And we're going to continue to bring forth reforms. And I welcome my friend from the first input on how we can solve this issue, the underlying issue. But we can't just sit here and say the status quo is okay. We are in a state of emergency. That dome light should be on because there are 7,000 kids who need somebody to be a voice for them. In Proverbs 31, it says to speak up for the poor and the destitute. If there is one group of people in this state that I would consider destitute, it is the foster children who have been neglected for their entire life. So when you go to vote today, I want you to think about those kids in your district. I'm sure all of you know of a foster family who has taken in a child. I want you to think about those kids and ask yourself, is doing nothing what they deserve? Because we talked about the MCOs, we've talked about the no reject, no eject clause, but what we haven't talked about are all of the other things in this bill. My friend from the 4th, I've had so many conversations with foster parents who said the same. I couldn't even get a haircut for my kid without getting permission from the department. We've included a provision in the bill that allow parents to make prudent and reasonable parent decisions for their foster children so that they can be treated in the same manner that they treat their own biological children. These children who have undergone traumatic events deserve to have a quality childhood as much as we can provide. They should be allowed to go on vacations with the families they're in. They should be allowed to go to school dances without additional impediments. They should be having normal childhood experiences, and that's one of the provisions in this bill. Again, when you vote on this bill today, I want you to think about all of the kids who have not had a voice for decades in this state. And I encourage you to vote green on this bill.
Lady in the 51st, Delegate Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welfare, health, happiness, and fortunes of a person or a group. It's a boy. It's a girl. It's precious. 10 fingers, 10 toes, 2 arms, 2 legs. That's what the parent prays for. That's what a parent wants. When you become a parent, my number one goal is to be a mother. To have my children say mama is a blessing. When I moved to this state 8 years ago, I became a mama to many children in HUD housing. I became a mama to many children in schools that didn't have the status quo home. See, when you say mama or you say dad, foster, kinship, or adoptive is not in the front of that. I've received texts, I've received calls, I've received emails. Our office has been flooded with persons from managed care.
Come to order. Senate will please come to order. Introduction of guests. The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Logan, we're very pleased to have some students from Sherman High School here, accompanied, making them a safe trip up here is Elizabeth Brunello. The students are Jasmine Aliff, Sierra Stevenson, Haley Kinney, Lieza Kelly, Juliana Perdue. They're here on behalf of the Year of the Child Day in support of public education and better mental health care access in schools. So please make them welcome. If they would stand.
Further introductions? Further introductions. Remarks by members of the Senate. Senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the paper today, put it on everybody's desk, it talks about the Tobacco Control Report and what grade West Virginia received. And we received an F in funding for state tobacco prevention and programs, an F in level of state tobacco taxes, an F in coverage and access to cessation services, and setting a minimum age of tobacco for tobacco products to 21. We did receive a D for its strength in smoke-free workplace laws. So folks, we all know that tobacco is a killer, and that's something that we can help here in the Senate by funding tobacco and passing some of the laws that we have in our committees. So again, if 1%, if we could cut tobacco use by 1%, we save $23 million in health care costs per year in West Virginia. Thank you.
Miscellaneous business. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just ask for unanimous consent that the remarks by the senator from Boone regarding tobacco be placed in the appendix of the journal.
Without objection. The senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee of the Whole has concluded its consideration of Senate Bill 451, and the report has been filed with the clerk.
Does the clerk have the report?
Yes, sir.
Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration. The bill be read a first time.
Clerk will read the bill. We'll read the report.
Your Committee of the Whole has had under consideration Senate Bill 451, Comprehensive Education Reform, and reports back to Committee Substitute for same, with the recommendation that the Committee Substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Craig Blair, Chair.
Report will be received. Junior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration. That the bill be advanced to second read.
Junior Senator from 17th moves that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time. The roll call has been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor of the junior senators from the 17th motion that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 18 yeas, 16 nays, 0 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the motion adopted. Clerk will read the bill a first time.
Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 451, Comprehensive Education Reform, first reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Finance Committee will meet today at 3 p.m. for budget hearings from the West Virginia Department of Administration and the West Virginia DEP. It's Subcommittee B as well.
Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Education Committee will be meeting at 2 o'clock in 451M. If the agenda is not posted, it will be shortly.
Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on the Judiciary will meet today at 3 p.m. and tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m., both meetings in the Judiciary Committee room in the West Wing.
Senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Government Organization will be meeting this afternoon at 2 p.m., room 208 West.
Further announcements? Further announcements. Senator from Tucker County?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Your energy is still not meeting today, so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew we wasn't meeting.
Further announcements. Not question before the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. I declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
And they sent out printouts, and this one stuck and hit me hard. A child in our system who's wearing a Superman shirt. And today we need superheroes. You were all elected by the people, for the people, because we are the people. Just because they can't get to a ballot box, it doesn't mean that our children are not worthy. Now, this bill states a lot. And DHHR has told us that they don't even need our vote on yeas or nays to do what they want to do. I accept that. But what I will not accept is that we use these children as commodity. What I will not accept is having to be sane, because I will be insane today, tomorrow, and forever for the future leaders of West Virginia. Now, it's hard to send a child out of state. And being a mother of 2 disabled children, I know I've had to travel far beyond to get the care that they need. And sometimes that's the right fit. We look at things in the box, we look at things outside the box, but it's always in the box. We never look around the box. We never look above the box. Where are the children's voices in this? I became a godmother to a child that's in a foster to adopt program. And the hell that she has gone through being in this system, it's disgusting, it's disgraceful, and it's disrespectful. For us to have a bill and not have the people that care for these children day in and day out, not even be welcome at the table, and this is the first time that they hear of this, it's preposterous. I want you to think back to the moment when a little person looked up at you and you know that they needed help. Whether you were a service personnel, EMS, whether you were an officer going to that home, whether you were a teacher trying to get their clothes clean because there was no electricity. See, this goes beyond DHHR. This goes with you walking your neighborhood and turning your face and not asking if you can help someone. Mountaineers are free. So be free to lend a helping hand. And this may be the only hand that you can lend in this House bill. But it's broken, and it's broken bad. And it's broken worse than the system that we already have. And I encourage a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Does the gentleman from the 60s or from the 27th Ellington wish to close debate?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, there were a lot of concerns that were raised today. Some do pertain to what the bill is addressing. Some pertain to a lot of the problems that we're having in general within the state and have not too much to do with this bill. What I'd like to focus on is what we're looking at. 7,000 children that are in the foster care system. The roughly 500 children that are placed out of state. One of our main emphasis was to try to bring a number of those children back to our state, bring them closer to home. There are a number of different avenues in which how to achieve that. We have looked at different things. DHHR is having a hard time addressing the problem and dealing with it. They are looking at trying to outsource a portion of that, and that is what the managed care system does. Managed care systems get a bad rap in many times. Yes, they are good in certain ways and bad in other ways, as is everything that we do. If we look at our managed care system in the state with Medicaid, we have approximately 550,000 Medicaid patients within the state out of a state of 1.8 million. Roughly 400,000 are in managed care system at this time. Last I looked, the sky is still above us. It has not fallen yet. Yes, there are good things that have happened with it. Yes, there are bad things that have happened with it. It's up to us to keep reviewing those things. One thing I will say is it has stabilized the cost to the state as far as taxpayer money going to the system and stabilize the levels that we're expending on each of these services. Same type of system as managed care for foster care kids. We have looked at a number of models in other states that have been done. Delegate Westfall and I, several years ago, met with Unicare. They have a model down in Georgia that seems to work very well for a lot of kids. It has coordinated services, improved things, a lot of the care, continuous care throughout their time in foster care. That was very appealing to us. Are there negatives? Certainly. Are there the possibility that people can do other alternative things? Yes. This system says that parents, the foster parents, have the option to continue the current fee-for-service system in Medicaid that they're already doing. It's not going to force them into it. It's going to give them the option to go into the managed care system and hopefully we'll coordinate care better. That may also stabilize costs to the state. The price tag of $225 million is what was roughly estimated. And yes, the Deputy Secretary yesterday did mention that we will have some cost savings in some areas and we may have some cost increases in others. And they are looking at a break-even point. But that should help with stability for the cost to the system. This is just one option. It's not the cure-all. We've never proposed that. I'd have perfect bill on the top of it if that was what was going on. But we all know that that never happens. But it is a step in the right direction for a population of kids. And it is also a step in the right direction to bring some kids back to our state. And that is one of the major goals. So, I mean, I could try to address other problems, and we're all looking at these other things. Yes, we want to increase the salaries for DHHR workers, CPS workers. We've been doing that across the state. Every division in the state needs that help. Looking at the 225 that this goes to, people have been blowing that out of proportion. 1% of that goes to the profit margin. 9% goes to administrative costs, and they have to justify that. If there are costs that are coming back, savings, that's going to be reappropriated into the services for these kids. So I'd like to set the record straight, and that's what the numbers are. It's an experiment. We're going by other models. We've been talking about this for years. Yes, we've included foster parents in discussions in the past. This has not been, as the lady from the 32nd mentioned, something that was done overnight with a few people talking about it. We've been looking at this for several years. Similar bill was on the agenda last year. It got blocked for the same types of reasons people have been doing. And as the gentleman to my left said, we keep doing the same thing over and expecting different results. Again, we can continue some of the same things, but this is another option. I don't see any reason why we can't implement it. If it doesn't work, we'll get rid of it. There are controls. Sunsets in 4 years. It's reappropriated each year up at that point. If we don't like it, we can get out of it. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those gentlemen from the first, Elgott McGeehan. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rule 49, I'm employed by what can be considered a legal residential provider.
As the gentleman has described his employment situation, the chair would rule the gentleman is a member of a class of greater than 5 and should vote. Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Lady from the 39th, your vote is not registered. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 67 ayes, 32 nays, 1 member absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2010.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2324, authorizing the Acupuncture Board to issue certificates to perform auricular acudetox therapy.
Gentleman 28th, Elgott Pack, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the purpose of this bill is to grant the authority to the State Acupuncture Board to issue certifications to perform auricular acudetox therapy. Auricular acudetox is a form of therapy that is used for the treatment of substance abuse, alcoholism, chemical dependency, detoxification, behavioral therapy, or trauma recovery. Currently, only professionals allowed to perform this procedure are acupuncturists. The provision in this bill will allow a physician assistant, registered professional nurse, practical nurse, chiropractor, physical therapist, psychologist, occupational therapist, social worker, professional counselor, EMS provider, or correctional facility medical staff to become certified to perform acudetox procedures. The committee substitute adds dentists to the list of professionals that may seek a certificate. For members that were present last session, this bill has the same policy as House Bill 4465, which passed the House 98-0, passed the Senate 33-0. The bill did not get signed into law because of a technical error in the Senate amendment, and it died on the last night. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 98 ayes, 0 nays, 2 members absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative. Chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2324.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2503 relating to court actions.
Gentleman from the 29th, Elgott Steele, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill addresses the right to court-appointed counsel in abuse and neglect cases. Under current law, all parents in an abuse and neglect case are appointed counsel at the state's expense once they file a financial affidavit. This includes non-offending parents. These non-offending parents face no accusations in the case, and they bear no risk of losing their parental rights. They are nonetheless appointed counsel at the state's expense. This bill provides that the DHHR must identify which parents are accused of being offending. So in the petition, the DHHR, when they make their petition, make their accusations, they will classify each adult respondent as offending or non-offending. Those offending parents are appointed counsel as a matter of due process because their parental rights are at stake. Non-offending parents under this bill are not appointed counsel, but they may hire their own lawyer or represent themselves pro se. This bill does provide an emergency mechanism, so to speak, that the judge may stop the proceedings on his own motion or on the motion of someone else at any time and appoint counsel to any unrepresented individual if the judge determines that the individual's due process rights are implicated. Mr. Speaker, that's the bill, and I urge its passage.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 81 ayes, 18 nays, 1 member absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2503.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2521 relating to permitting fur bearer parts.
Gentleman from the 7th, Delegate Harshbarger, to explain the bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2521 we have before us revises existing code to provide that in addition to pelts, fur barrier parts, including carcasses for the making of lures and baits, carcass parts, including glands, skulls, claws, and bones, and fur barrier urine taken during the legal season may be sold, traded, or bartered. Note, this bill does not authorize the sale, trading, or bartering of fur-bearing meat for human consumption. The bill also provides its language for permitting the sale and trading of bartering of hides and tails of legally killed squirrel. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 29th, Delegate Steele.
Yes, would the gentleman yield to a question?
Yes.
Would this include baculum?
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? Gentleman from the 3rd, Delegate Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just so we're clear, will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman does yield.
Based upon the gentleman's question there, the original bill explicitly stated baculum.
Yes, it did.
This current bill does not state baculum, right?
No, it don't, but if you look at the bill, bones covers that term baculum.
What is baculum?
I don't have the official definition in here with me, but it actually, it's an anatomy of an animal, which is a bone. It's found in certain placental mammals that have
placental mammals,
tongue-tied here. Mammals that has a market value. As many people seen on moonshiners this past weekend, they actually used a raccoon baculum for a drip on a moonshine still, and basically it's the bone of a penis of a mammal. That's what it is.
Bone.
It's an anatomy part.
A mammal's penis bone. Would you say there's a big or small market for baculum in West Virginia?
I can't answer that. I'm not knowledgeable about it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, 88 ayes, 12 nays, 1 member absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present having voted in the affirmative, chair declares the bill passed. Clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2521.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Further bills on third reading, bills on second reading.
Senate Bill 27, removing restrictions on where certain traditional lottery games may be played.
Are there amendments?
Committee on Finance moves to amend the bill. This is HFIN AM 1-29.
Does the gentleman from the 64th Delegate Householder wish to explain the amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The committee has reported the bill to the floor with a technical amendment that added language consistent with the enactment of the sports wagering bill in 2018. I urge adoption.
Question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Are there members who wish to speak to the adoption of the amendment? If not, the question is on the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. Ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 255 relating to Emergency Medical Services Advisory Committee.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2001 relating to exempting Social Security benefits from personal income tax.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2474, relating to a reserving methodology for health insurance and annuity contracts.
Are there amendments? The bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2476, relating to the valuation of a motor vehicle involved in an insurance claim.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2478, modifying the Fair Trade Practices Act.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Fluharty moves to amend the bill. This is HFA Fluharty 1-31.
Gentleman from the third.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move to pull the amendment.
Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Are there further amendments?
Delegate McGeehan moves to amend the bill. This is HFA McGeehan 1-31, number 1.
Gentleman from the first, Delegate McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Quite simply, my amendment, if you can read in the system, is to strike the entire section of code or abolish basically the Fair Trade Act. I'm open for questions. I reserve the right to close, and I ask for the ayes and nays.
Gentleman 27, Delegate Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I must oppose the gentleman's amendment. Obviously, the bill seeks to affect the Fair Trade Act, and repealing it would clearly nullify the bill. Let me just briefly explain what the Fair Trade Act does so that you'll understand, and I'm sure the gentleman will get into this on his close, but in order to anticipate some of his arguments. Currently, the Fair Trade Act is basically intended to prevent predatory pricing. It's been in effect in West Virginia for a long time, intended to protect smaller businesses from huge conglomerates that move into an area, cut a price below cost, suck up basically the market for that product, put the smaller business out of competition, and then raise the prices back up to whatever the market will sustain. That's the basic purpose of the Fair Trades Act. A number of provisions of the Act, but basically in order to enforce the Fair Trade Act, you have to actually prove that the pricing of the person you're charging is intended, has a specific intent to drive out other competition. It's not just somebody's offering a product for less than I am. It's got to be with a specific intent. And the Act basically sets a minimum price by which it's presumed that if you go below the cost plus 7%, you have that intent, but you still have to go forward further and prove that there is a specific intent to do that. The Act is it's a much larger entity, seeks to drive out competition of those smaller businesses that are its competitors. So the bill has a specific purpose. It's not a broad purpose. It's not utilized very often, but it is a needed purpose, especially in a state that has so many smaller businesses. So while I certainly don't pretend to say the Act is perfect in every instance, it has a purpose and we need to maintain it. If there are concerns about it, they ought to be addressed by specific amendments tailored to the specific situation. So I urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment.
The Chair is advised that House Bill 2478 affects only Articles 6 and 9, or Section 6 and 9 of Article 11, not the entirety of Article 11. Therefore, the scope of the amendment exceeds the scope of the bill and is therefore not in order and won't be considered further. Are there further amendments? Bill will be advanced. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 2480, relating to the regulation of an internationally active insurance group.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2524, permitting a pharmacist to convert prescriptions authorizing refills under certain circumstances.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 2679, relating to state-issued identification cards.
Are there amendments? Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on second reading? Bills on first reading?
Committee substitute for House Bill 2607, relating to licensure of nursing homes.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2612, proposing rules related to the completion or updating of source water protection plans.
Bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? Leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, for our colleague, Delegate Kump.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Leaves will be granted. Remarks by members of the House. Gentleman from the 58th, Delegate Coles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's act boldly. But as Lincoln said, with malice towards none, and with charity for all. I think we should, and I want to take bold action to improve public education in West Virginia. We can do better. Our system is too centralized. Our system is too tangled with red tape. I think we all know there is too little local control in our state system, too little innovation. Our system has too little engagement with parents and students. Part of the reforms I think we are on the path. We need to cultivate our human relations and our human resources. A 10% pay raise in 2 years, $200 or so million towards PEIA, more counselors, more behavioral health specialists, more help in the classroom. This, I think, is support for our human resources, moral support, a boost to moral morality, or moral support. But it is an effort to recruit talent, human resources in the school system. It's an effort to retain talent within our system. That's a big item. If we want to have a better school system, human resources is a big part. But also, there is another part. The centralized system, I think, is ripe for changes. The lack of local control, the lack of innovation, the lack of freedom and flexibility for students and parents. Our system, my friends, is choking. It's choking itself. Our school aid formula promotes only basic average, the minimum for all. And we fall short of that. The system disallows the very things we're gasping for. The local control, the innovation, the flexibility, freedom and choice in education. My question, Mr. Speaker, is how long should we fail to act? Is our education system last in the nation, or are we only second to last? Please, Mr. Speaker, let's act boldly. Without malice and with charity, today there is a mass exodus from our beloved mountain state. We can and should have a better school system. The governor keeps asking why. We're last. We can and should do better. So, Mr. Speaker, as Lincoln said, without malice and charity for all, let's go try to make our system better. Thank you.
Gentleman 36, Douglas Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, we had an amendment from my friend from the 37th, and I was disappointed in the body as we voted on a small amendment to a bill, and it really wasn't partisan, but we voted in a partisan manner. And it's unfortunate that we get into these things and we get into those issues and vote for things for simply R or D behind our name in that aisle or this aisle. Now, we debated 2010 today, which was a foster care bill. And when it came across the table in health, I was interested because who could make foster care partisan? Not possible, right? So we went through the process, and it was somewhat partisan in health committee, but we got through, we made some improvements, and we got it to judiciary. And as I said the other day, judiciary did a very good job of bipartisanship on this bill and made some improvements. And again, I thought there's no way you can make foster care partisan. You know, we disagree. Some on this side thought the MCO things, it goes across the lines, but as people pointed out, we do it for other people. And the other issues aren't really partisan. Truthfully, the bill doesn't do a whole lot. If you can see my paper clips here, that splits out everything the bill does. There might be 2 pages, maybe a page and a half that actually does something. So as we go through that is, again, Foster kids, we all agree there's a problem. We want to fix it, right? We all agree that. You know, we're not going to vote against foster kids, right? You're not going to vote against foster kids. But unfortunately, it was partisan. It's actually the most partisan bill we've had this session so far. We have members of the body pointing out and accusing Democrats of voting against foster kids. And then even more disappointing yesterday, we have a political action committee. You know those nasty people that send out those negative ads on you and those letters that come in the mail about what a terrible person you are, usually with a funky look on your face, a picture of you in all gray and big red letters. Those people came out against Democrats yesterday because we don't like foster kids. And you know how bad that was yesterday? You know how ugly it was? How partisan it was? A member of this body got a text from his 11-year-old son. Dad, what are you doing to foster kids? Why'd you do that? Why are you attacking foster kids? You know how bad that is? You know how ugly that is? I would encourage this body to get back to the way we did things in the past and on other bills and things that don't look good in glossy letters on that mailer here in a year when you're running for office, and get about D and R. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at 12th, Doug Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the delegate from the 16th, I believe, talked about the basketball game, which I think the better side won, but that's beside the point. But we only raised $2,300. So I challenge everybody in here to give a donation to the American Cancer Society so we can get at least $3,000. $5,000 would be great. If every member here give $10, you can see what that does. So I think delegates going to hold the donation until next week. So if you can possibly get a donation to him, I think it was a great cause. So thank you.
Gentleman at 3rd, Doug Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We just heard about this bold new agenda. Here we are, day 23 on this bold new agenda, and we just took up a bill about the buying, selling, and trading of animal parts. Things like animal urine and carcasses, and as we learned, baculum. The gentleman mentioned he saw it on TV. Hell, I thought I was sitting here on TV, reality TV, because I can't believe on day 23 of this bold new agenda, we're taking up baculum bills. So forgive me, Mr. Speaker, this bold new agenda. I'm not taking the bait because we're not paving roads in baculum. We're not putting people back to work with baculum. We're certainly not bringing more people to West Virginia with baculum. Now, we talked about that this week, how we need to keep our young people here and bring more young people in, get them to stay in the state. There's literally a bill called the Stay in the State Act. How do I know? I've introduced it. Yet, we don't take it up. You know, we have a student loan crisis. That's what the Stay in the State Act would do. We are #1 in the country for defaults on student loans, yet we don't talk about it. Apparently, the Stay in the State Act is only going to stay in committee. So, as we move forward from day 24 and beyond, I think we need to remember this is the people's house. We represent the people. The people are not emailing me about baculum bills. They're not emailing me about private property rights so they can get a DUI. It's another landmark bill we passed out of this body. They're emailing me about the education system. A few of them are sitting in the gallery right now wondering if they have to come back down by the thousands again. They're emailing me about cannabis because, like it or not, it will create thousands of jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. Yet that bill gets triple referenced. Baculum bills get double referenced. So let's remember that as we go forward. We have a job to do the people's work because we are in the people's house, and I'm not so sure this bold agenda is a reflection of what the people want. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman 17th, Doug Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask unanimous consent that the comments from the gentleman from the 12th and the gentlelady from the 32nd on House Bill 2010 be printed in the appendix to the Journal.
Is there objection? Chair hears no objection. Gentleman from the 1st, Doug McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll make it brief. I would just like to see some more sound arguments made on the House floor. If you propose to perpetuate a premise that if you don't like my bill, then you obviously don't like X, Y, or Z, whether that's kids, whether that's police officers, whether that's firefighters. That is not even an argument. It's a childish, ad hominem idea of idiocy. So I would really appreciate it going forward if perhaps we could lay off that and come up with formal, logical arguments, favor or not in favor of one bill or the other. Thanks.
The gentleman from the 50th, Doug Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the remarks regarding House Bill 2010 by the gentle ladies from the 51st, Delegate Walker and Delegate Fleischauer, the gentle lady from the 36th, Delegate Eastep Burton, the gentleman from the 67th, Delegate Doyle, the 36th, Delegate Rowe, and the 4th, Delegate Zukoff be printed in the appendix of the journal. And also, Mr. Speaker, under remarks by members, the remarks by the gentleman from the 36th, Delegate Robinson, and the gentleman from the 3rd, Delegate Fluharty, also be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Gentleman from the 67th, Delegate Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask unanimous consent for all the remarks on House Bill 2010 from both today on third reading and on second reading be printed in the appendix of the journal, as well as the remarks by member by our colleague from the 58th today.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Further remarks by members? If not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last day to introduce bills is February 12th. Members need to have their bills to bill drafting pre-approved by February 8th for introduction.
Miscellaneous business. Delegate Caputo. I'm sorry. We'll get there. We'll get there. Miscellaneous business. Okay, if not, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move, subject to announcements, which I already made, that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. Friday, February 1st.
Question before the House is the lady's motion that the House stand, subject to announcements, adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow, Friday, February 1st. Are there announcements? Gentleman from the 10th, Delegate Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Banking and Insurance will continue its agenda immediately following the floor session in Government Org. Your Committee on Finance will meet Friday morning at 9 a.m. for the budget hearing from the Department of Revenue, then following with the budget from the Auditor's Office. We will take up legislation following the morning hearings. The agenda will be posted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 35th, Doug Capito.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Unusual unanimous consent request to return to the 7th order of business for the purpose of a special introduction.
Chair did miss introduction to guests. Chair stands corrected. Is there objection? Chair hears no objection.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome back a former colleague of ours. We now call her Congresswoman. Carol Miller is here with us. If you would please welcome her.
Are there further introductions of guests before we move to announcements? Okay, if not, Gentleman 35th may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on the Judiciary will meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning in the committee room, and the agenda will be posted. Thank you.
Gentleman 28th, Delegate Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the House Government Organization Committee room. The agenda will be posted. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, Republican members of the House will caucus here in the chamber, and we will begin at 4 p.m.
Gentleman 9th, Delegate Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Prevention and Treatment of Substance Abuse will be meeting today at 3 o'clock versus 3:30 in room 215E, and the agenda is posted.
Gentleman from the 41st, Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet today at 2:15 in room 215E,
and the agenda is posted. Republicans will caucus at 1:45 in the chairman's office.
Gentleman from the 12th, Douglas Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have some lunch provided by the tourism industry in 204E. If anybody wants to stop by, first come, first serve. I'm not sure how much is there, but I know there's some brisket from Adelphia, so stop by if you want to.
Gentleman from the 10th, Douglas Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As a reminder, your Committee on Energy will meet today at 2 o'clock in Judiciary Committee Room. The agenda is posted.
Gentleman from the 17th, Douglas Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Seniors, Children's, and Family Issues will meet today at 1 o'clock in the House Government Organization Conference Room.
Lady for 32nd, Douglas Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democrats on Health and Human Resources will not caucus today. They are free until the committee meeting.
Gentleman from the 50th, Douglas Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democratic members of the House will caucus today at 4 p.m. We'll send you a text on the location. We're trying to finalize the location. Democrats at 4 p.m.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is a motion by the lady from the 49th that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. Ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.